Hi, this is Mats from Bitsquid, and in this tutorial I would like to show you a little bit about how to use the Bitsquid level editor to create worlds. Levels in Bitsquid are made up out of units. A unit is typically associated with a mesh, so you will export a unit mesh from your content creation package of choice, something like Maya or Max, and import it into the engine. In this scene, there are several units in view at this time. So for example, here's a mountain range piece unit, and there's also units in the walkway here, different ones. Everything you can see on the screen is a unit basically, as you can see, when I hover over them, I can see where the units differ, where the different units are placed in the level. And I can click to select them. I can also hold down the shift key to select multiple units at the same time. Yeah, it's pretty simple. In order to navigate the level, you can switch into free flight mode by pressing the space key. I click the space key now, and I enter a mode where I can rotate the camera around the scene like this. I can also move the camera around in the scene by using the W, A, S, D keys. So it's a free flight camera that can move around in all directions like this. As you can see, it's kind of twitchy at the moment. So in order to get more fine movement, I can control the speed of the camera by using the mouse wheel. So if I roll the mouse wheel towards me a little bit, I get very small fine movements, and if I roll it away from me, I can increase the speed of the camera as it moves. So I can move closer to an object and then sort of dial back a bit and just have a very fine control over the camera when I'm close to an object like this. And I press the spacebar again to toggle out of free flight mode, and in this point I can actually start selecting stuff again. If I select an object, I can also use the Maya style orbit camera, which is available in this mode. And in order to use it, I need to focus on a single object in the scene. And I do this by selecting an object and pressing the F key on the keyboard. At this point, the camera will frame the object in the viewport, and I can hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, and using the left mouse button, I can rotate the camera around this point. While still holding the Alt key, I can zoom the camera outward by pressing the right mouse button, clicking and holding the right mouse button in the display like this. And as you can see, the focus point is still at that point, so I've sort of moved the camera back from the object a little bit. And I'm still holding down the Alt key at this point, and I can pan the camera as well by holding down the middle mouse button and dragging in the display. And using this method, you can very quickly navigate around the scene and place the camera exactly where I wanted it, and then just release the Alt key and go back to editing the level. Now let's look at the place tool to place some objects into this level. In order to place something, I open the scenery browser from the window menu. And this scenery browser contains all the objects that are available that's been imported into this Bitsquid project at this moment. So you have units, which are typically the visual elements like meshes. There's particle effects, and there's also sounds. You can filter this list by clicking these radio buttons at the top here. So I can remove the particle effects and sounds from the list. And I'm also able to type into this text field to find a unit of a particular type. This is filtering the list on file names. So I think I want something like a shrub. Yeah, there we go. So I can find an object here. You can see there's a preview of how the unit looks at the bottom end of this panel here. Now this object is selected. I can use the place tool available from the toolbar up here to place these objects inside the level. And it will perform, it's actually snapping to a very large grid here. Let me show you a feature right now as well. I can adjust the grid size to just let's see, that's from the tools menu, I believe. Yeah, so I want the standard grid size of 1 meter. That's more like it. And as you can see, I get a little bit of a ghost image here of the shrub. You can hardly see it, probably because of compression artifacts. But if I hold down the mouse button, I will start to spawn a shrub, and I can drag it around on the surface like this, and sort of release it where I want it. So I can very quickly place a bunch of shrub objects in the level like this. Yeah, so one trick here is that as you can see, it sort of performs a raycast into the level and tries to pick a point at where to place the object. And then after you hold down the button, if after you click the button, it will sort of decide on the level where the height plane of where you will be dragging that unit. So in order to place something out here in this area, but at the same level as this platform, I can just click and hold here and drag it outside, and it will be placed in the air at the same level as the platform here. Yeah, so I placed a bunch of shrub objects here. Let me show you the different ways you can manipulate these objects in the scene. I'm going to use the move tool to do this. As you can see from the tools menu, there's a little indicator of what kind of shortcut key will switch to this tool. So for the place tool, you can press the Q key on your keyboard. For the move tool, you can press the W key. The rotate tool is the E key. And the scale tool is the R key. So these map very conveniently to the fingers on your hand here, and I can just very quickly switch between different tools and have a quick workflow. So let me use the move tool now to move these items around. As you can see, the move gizmo is, let me just adjust the camera a little bit here. The move gizmo has 3 axes. The Bitsquid engine has the Z axis. The positive Z axis is the up axis in the world. So as you can see, these axes are the X axis is red, the Y axis is green, and the Z axis is blue. So let me just hover over these, and you can see that if I click here and drag this, I will move the shrub upwards. I can move it sideways using these two, or I can move it in the ground plane by clicking this area here. It will constrain to that. And let's see. If I don't want to use the grid for a moment, I can hold down the control key on the keyboard to temporarily disable the grid. Sorry. And this way, I'm able to move the bush or shrub around in a more fine-grained manner. Yeah, okay, so as you see here, the manipulator on this object is in kind of an awkward position. It's authored in such a way that the root point is slightly to offset from the center of the object. And this depends on how the unit was exported from the content creation package. So in this typical unit is probably exported in such a way that it was offset a little bit from the origin of the scene. In order to correct this, I can go into the edit menu and edit the pivot of the object. And I can choose to center the pivot in the object, and this will get a pivot point that's sort of at the center of the mass of the object instead. So it becomes easier to place. And conversely, I can go back into the pivot menu and reset it to restore it to its original position. I can also go into pivot edit mode, where I press the insert key on the keyboard to toggle the manipulator into the pivot manipulator. And at this point, I can freely adjust the pivot point inside the object. And of course, this works with the different snap tools as well. So I've just sort of moved the pivot point freely by holding the control key. But I can also go into the snap modes menu up here in the toolbar. And as you can see, snap to grid is activated. If I uncheck that and instead say, well, I want to snap to points instead, I'm able to move this pivot into a snap position inside this unit. So that's at the root of the shrub there. And I can go back into snap to grid mode. You can also temporarily toggle these by using the X, C, and V key on the keyboard. So you can see I can turn them on and off by holding these keys together. And using this in conjunction with the move tools, you can very quickly move things into the correct places in the level. Now I'm actually in the pivot edit mode still here. You can see because there's no arrows on this, I'm just going to exit out of that by pressing the insert key again. Another nice feature is that if you want to sort of really quickly adjust the pivot point of an object just before a rotation or something, you can just hold down the D key on the keyboard and it will go into the pivot edit mode while the key is held. So I can adjust the pivot and I can then release the button to commit those changes. Right, so that's the move manipulator. Let's have a look at the rotation manipulator as well. Now, actually, I want to touch on a small detail with the move manipulator as well. As you can see, the grid size here is at 1 meters, and you have the grid sizes available from the from the tools menu. Sorry about that. Here we go. There's a bunch of predefined grid sizes, but there's also a grid size type-in. If you just want to type in a custom grid size, you can press the G key on the keyboard and we'll get a pop-up that you can type in. I want the grid size to be exactly 13 meters, like this. And you get a slightly larger grid there. Actually, was it 30 meters? 12 meters. Oh yeah, this was 1 before, so that's quite large, isn't it? Let's just bring that back to 1. And I'll show you the rotation tool. So the rotation tool is similar. You have you can constrain rotation to different axes like this. You click and drag, and you can see this is actually moving in increments right now. It's not free rotate, and that's the rotation snap, which is on by default. And just like with the move tool, I can go into the I can set a rotation snap in degrees by pressing the H key on the keyboard to bring up this pop-up like this. And I can say I want to have 45-degree increments. And as you can see, I get a coarser grid there. Or I can hold the control key to disregard the grid snap completely. There's also a rotation handle that rotates the object in the camera viewport, this direction, which might be useful if you're composing scenes from a certain angle. Yeah. So that's it for the rotate tool, and conversely there's a scale tool as well that allows you to scale objects like this to create variations, and you can also skew the object a little bit, or not skew, but you can do per axis modifications like this to create a little bit of a variation if you wanted to do that. Don't go too extreme with that though, because it might look a bit stretchy. Yeah, so that's it for the move, rotate, and scale tools and the placing objects. I want to talk a little bit about the different ways you can snap stuff as well. So if I go to the move tool again, you can see that over here you can have different frames of reference, for example. So this is a local axis for the object, and there's world axis as well. So if I rotate this object slightly, it will have a different world axis or rotation axis. You can see here's the world axis, and here's the local axis of the object. And this works with both the rotation and move tools. So you can have world axis rotation or local axis rotation for the object as well. The other feature that's nice to know about is that you can have two frames of reference when snapping stuff. You can have relative snap or absolute snap. In relative snap, an object is always translated along a distance that's a multiple of the grid increment. So as you can see, this object is moving around like normally, but if I offset this object slightly by holding down the control key to temporarily disable the grid, I can move it a little bit up like this, and if I now move the object, it will sort of snap to a grid that was centered on the object before I started the move. That's relative snap. There's also absolute snap here, and if I activate absolute snap, the object will snap to absolute positions on the grid instead. So as you can see, it can be returned to the grid that's located at the origin of the world, if you will. So that's grid snapping. We also have surface snapping, so you can sort of place an object directly on a surface. If I move this a little bit, there's a bush. If I wanted to place this bush onto the surface, I would activate surface snap and just grab the axis, and I can place it directly on top of a surface like that. So that's nice. Yeah, so the other thing I want to quickly touch on before this tutorial is over is the prototyping tool, which allows you to edit and create gameplay elements inside your levels without having to involve artists to build units for you. So the prototype tool is available from the toolbar here, and using it I can just click and drag in the world to define areas where I want to create walls. So that actually I did that without having the grid snap enabled. So let's enable that, and I'll get a nicer sort of regular wall like this. And these can be moved about and rotated, of course. If I wanted to create a slope, I can do a little bit of slope there. Actually, let's use a slightly smaller rotation snap on that, so you can get a bit of a fine tune there. And I want to move that in the world axis for now. There we go. So using these, you can actually create create gameplay elements that you can try out gameplay elements like, is the player able to jump this distance? Is this gap too large? Or is this doorway large enough for the player to walk through? Those sort of things. And you can also, if I go into the property editor for this, let's see that, there we go. I can make changes to how these look in the game world. If they should be visible or not. Maybe they should be invisible, just creating invisible walls that will block the player. Or choose a color for them, so you can have a nice sort of, can have different colors mean different things in your world. And you're also able to set physics properties for these, which will be covered in a later tutorial. So you can have them block certain things but not others and stuff like that. Yeah, that's about it for this tutorial on how to use the level editor in Bitsquid. Hope you find it informative, and thank you very much.